The notion that believing in God keeps you down is very common today.
Partially a political statement, it's partially a tract on the world that we live in today. And as a matter of fact, right now, it's even more true than it was then. We are manipulated by a lot of media around us. We are consumed by consumerism. And as you can see in the recent events in this country, they are still among us. They do live, indeed.
missing.
this isn't this interesting.
creatures.
This is what the atheist has to fall back on. Is this most absurd, a hypothetical, imagined worldview, and that's because really the whole position is absurd and imagined. I mean, I'm arguing a very specific thing about
Jay,
transcendentals in this
The
world.
machine I'm talking to you about are human beings. It's not an absurd world. The world I'm talking about
That's a
is real
paradigm
world.
assumption that you think humans are merely biological machines.
Yep. Do you have
but
evidence
you-
that
but
I'm
you
made
believe
of
that you wrote
anything
your
else
book.
than an atom, than a set of molecules?
This
Do
is
you have
ridiculous. You
evidence?
believe you wrote your book. So your book was the work of JF and JF's mind, right? It wasn't the process of a determined machine, right?
It was the process of a determined machine. It was the
So-
process
so
of
you
the
didn't have
neurons
your
in my
ideas.
mind.
You
What?
didn't have, and you're not making your own arguments right now. They're just a chemical determined process.
Absolutely.
So you're not making arguments. Thank you. I've won the debate.
All right. Bye.
The scientific method cannot justify the scientific method. Therefore, it itself is a dogmatic religious presupposition.
Okay, well, I look forward to it. I heard your debate with Nicholas Fuentes, and I thought that was very entertaining, and so I respect your debate skills, that's for sure.
Well, thank you. I've yet to lose a debate, actually.
Brzezinski model, the technocrat model, is much more interested in the incremental, slow kill, Fabian approach to bringing technocracy into being. So they're not going to send Homeland Security troops to round you up and put you in a FEMA camp. They'd much rather promote everybody being enmeshed in video games, the Disney gulag, the virtual reality gulag, all this kind of stuff is a much better FEMA camp in your home. They don't need the FEMA camp. It's too messy. It's a big ordeal. And so all the nonsense of all the patriot crap on the radio, that's not going to happen. They don't need to. The shadow global government is already here. And as we said, it's in the latter stages of the mopping up process to move it into the next phase, i.e. between two pages, the next page. Welcome, my nerds. Welcome. It's time to get back to, I gotta finish my piece of keto candy. It's time to get back to wisdom, to Sirach. Every place I stayed had no internet. I apologize. I don't know why. In Texas doesn't believe in internet anymore. It was all dial up everywhere. Therefore, now that I'm at our family condo, I can do the intranets. Also, check out the Dyer Wave album 2 from Amid the Ruins. It's pretty dope. Those were the clips you were hearing. Hasn't dropped yet. The full album, the volume 1 is out. It's had like 3,500, 4,000 views. Go check that out. Dyer Wave Volume 1, the full album. And then now we got Dyer Wave Album 2 coming out. I'm pretty stoked. I like it. And everybody thinks that I'm Amid the Ruins. I'm not Amid the Ruins. It's another dude. He's also, there's his cover for part 2. It's pretty dope. Pretty dope. So definitely go check out Amid the Ruins channel. Also subscribe to Benny Wills' new channel. He's doing stuff kind of independent from Joy Camp. So go check out Benny's channel. And then check your DMs. I want to send you Canadian silver. Is that a type? It sounds like a type of marijuana. Have you had the Canadian silver, eh? It gets you really stoned, eh? Have you had the Canadian silver, eh? You'll see, it's like smoking a maple leaf if you have the Canadian silver. I smoke it in my pipe. My pipe is shaped like a wooden boot. That's my impression of a Canadian stoner. If you mean an actual piece of silver from Canada, that's cool. What is the Canadian silver? I don't know what that is. Everybody always assumes that you know what they're talking about. And I almost never know what anyone is talking about. Ever. I'm sorry, this table is squishy. This table bitching. This table is a bitch. It's bitching at me. I think we're at chapter... Where are we? Chapter 18, maybe? I think that's about right. We'll do 18. Because we did 10 and then we did 10. I think that's how we did it. You still haven't told me what Canadian silver is. Why do I want to go into my direct messages if I don't know what Canadian silver is? People send me a lot of really neat stuff, which I appreciate. But sometimes people send food. It weirds me out. I mean, I know that I'm not going to be eating Canadian silver unless it's like colloidal silver or whatever. But there's something weird about sending food to people you don't know. I don't know about that now. Hey, dude, I cooked you brownies. I'm going to mail them to you 1,000 miles away. What are you sending me, brah? I don't know what I'm eating. Canadian bacon? Remember that movie, Canadian Bacon? Canadian Silver is playing this week at the Roxy. Okay, that's somebody else. I'm gonna send you food. I want to watch you eat food on cam. Yeah, that's the kind of weird things. Hey, I sent you a homemade Hot Pocket. Why haven't you eaten my homemade Hot Pocket I mailed you on camera? I'm gonna go off on you and expose you because you didn't eat the Hot Pocket I homemade for you. Somebody sends me a package with a Hot Pocket wrapped in tinfoil. Wouldn't that be nasty? Anyway, but you know, being a high tier e-celebrity now, I get all these perks. The perks like homemade Hot Pockets sent in the mail with bombs in it and shit. Trying to assassinate me. Okay, so tell me what Canadian silver is, bro. I don't even know. Send me donuts. That's more like it. I've had some weird things sent to me, dude. One guy sent me his book, and it was like all his history as an Illuminati mind control slave. I'm like, dude, come on. It was like a spiral bound book. Anyway, so we do have some super chats. I will be taking super chats today, so let's get into this so we're not here all day. We're going to talk about wisdom. And again, I know we were going to do this very quick. I apologize. I didn't realize that literally every hotel and Airbnb I stayed at had crap internet. I couldn't stream at any place. The only place I could stream was at Hesher and Spore's house. And they have a Vietnam vet, traumatized MK Ultra assassin, Chihuahua Weenie. I'm not kidding. He had mind control problems. And I was his trigger. He bit me on the ankle, by the way. Dude freaking bit me on the ankle. I'm not joking. He's a Vietnam vet, Chihuahuini, they're called, with trauma-based mind control, and I'm the trigger. So I don't think I've ever been bitten by a dog. This is the first time I've ever got bit. Dude took a chunk out of my ankle. He was my Achilles heel. So anyway, thank you for these super chats. We'll get to those here in a minute. Let's get into it. If you heard part 2 for the subscribers, it was cool. Everybody enjoyed that. Everybody's enjoying the practicality, practical wisdom. It's not all philosophy. There's practical wisdom here. Brah. 18. He who lives forever, God, created everything. Ex nihilo. Thank you. The Lord alone will be declared righteous. He's permitted no one to proclaim his works. God reveals God's theology, God's doctrine. He's the final authority. Who can trace out all of God's works? Yes, even all of the energies of God. We don't know. Who will measure his majestic power with numbers? Who will add to his measure? Who will describe his mercy? There is no one who can add or subtract. There is no one who can search out the wonders of God. When a man completes his search, then he starts over. When he stops, he will be perplexed. What is man and what use is he? What good is he? What is man's evil? The number of man's days are considered great if he lives to be 100, but that is but a drop of water in the sea and a grain of sand. So are a few years within a day of eternity. Therefore the Lord is patient with humans, and he pours out his mercy upon them. He sees and knows their end, that it is evil. By the way, there's multiple senses in which evil is used in Scripture. This trips up a lot of people. Sometimes evil just means a privation, a lack of good. Sometimes it means an event in a city, a providential event like Hurricane Katrina might be under purview. Or sometimes it means moral evil. So evil has multiple senses. It doesn't always mean the same thing here. Sometimes it just means the sufferings that come upon us. And God knows that our end is death. Death is what is the result of the fall. Therefore, God makes atonement for man and has mercy upon man. Therefore, the mercy of a man is upon his neighbor, and the mercy of the Lord is upon all his flesh. Right. So, if man can be merciful to a fellow human being, God is that much more merciful to all of us. What is Jesus? Jesus echoes this, right? God makes the sun to rise on the just and the unjust. Therefore, be like your heavenly Father and bless those who curse you. Pray for those who persecute you. The mercy of the Lord is on all. It rebukes and it trains and it teaches. So God's chastisements are mercy. They're for our good. The law of God is for our good. It's to help us. It's not here to constrict us, make us automatons. That's the only way that you can actually have freedom is with law. Freedom presupposes law. A lot of people don't understand that, but yes. How can you have freedom without laws that regulate right and wrong and therefore prevent, hopefully, tyranny? You can't have freedom if there's tyranny. So in order to prevent tyranny, you got to have laws, moral laws especially, right? My son, do not bring, let's see. God has mercy on those who receive his discipline and those who are eager for his statutes and judgments. So thank you all for joining me today, because we are all here because we are eager for the divine statutes and judgments. My son, do not bring disgrace on the good that you have done. Don't cause grief by your words when you give someone a gift. Yeah, don't give a gift and be like, there was a funny girl who came to the event this weekend and she negged me. It was pretty funny, her neg. She was like, this is my first time I've ever met a YouTuber in person, and your event is pretty low key. I mean, there was 60, 70 people there. It wasn't like there was going to be 1,000 people, million people there. But I thought that was a funny comment. She was like, yeah, this is a really low-key event for a YouTube star. I was like, well, I never really claimed to be a YouTube star, but okay, if you want to say that. So if you give gifts, don't cause grief with your words. And I'm kidding about the girl that came. It didn't cause any grief. I thought it was funny. Does not dew give relief from burning heat? In the same way, a kind word is even better than a gift. That's an interesting way of phrasing it. So remember that your words have power. The power of life and death is in the tongue, Solomon says. Both a gift and a kind word are found in a gracious man. A fool will insult and disgrace someone. The gift of an envious man makes his eyes waste away. I'm not sure what that means. The gift of an envious man makes his eyes waste away. I guess because he didn't want to give it. It's like, don't begrudge when you give gifts. Like, I've met rich dudes who like, yeah, I guess you get a Christmas present, and they're like begrudgingly giving you some money or whatever. Don't be like that. It's better not to even give if you're going to give begrudgingly. What's the point? Before you speak, learn. Before you get sick, take care of your health. So Scripture says to be healthy, by the way. Before you make judgment, examine yourself closely. In the hour of visitation, you will find atonement for your sins. Before you become sick, humble yourself. At the time of your sinning, prove your conversion. Repent. Turn away from it. Don't let anything hinder you from paying your vows. If you owe money, you got to pay them debts. Pay up, dog. Pay up. Make bank, and then pay me your bank. I'm kidding, y'all. I'm kidding. Do not become like a man who tempts God. Remember that the Lord chastises. There's anger on the day of death. There's a time of vengeance when God will turn his face away to chastise you. Remember the time of hunger and the time of plenty. If you're wealthy and successful, remember this can all go away. You could be a broke-ass hobo tomorrow. You could be a hobo demon in a David Lynch movie, hopping on hobo trains from hell, popping in and out of existence like a hobo demon. Could happen tomorrow. You don't know. You don't know. Poverty and need should be remembered in the days of wealth. From morning until evening, time changes, and all things are changed, but everything is soon in the presence of the Lord. So it's like there's an eternal present from God's perspective. See, an eternal present.
No beginning, no end, eternal present. A wise man will have the fear of the Lord in everything that he does. And in the days of his sin, he will guard against, in these days of sin, right, in this fallen world after the fall, the wise man will guard his way. An intelligent man knows wisdom and praises those who find her. So that's one of the ironies, is that it takes intelligence to recognize intelligence. We can say that's why there's only 124 people watching us today, because you, my beloved audience, are the intelligent people out there. And there's only 124 of us, literally in the whole world. We are the 124 highest IQ people in the world. But hopefully we don't just know intelligence, as the text says, but we also are seeking wisdom. Right? So just knowing the bare facts is not enough. This is a consistent pattern in Scripture. You also got to have the application of the knowledge. The wise men pour forth accurate proverbs. How many people even read or pour forth proverbs at all, ever? Hardly anybody. So this is a unique situation. We are pouring forth, not my proverbs, but wise proverbs from the Spirit of God. Here's a section on self-control. This, by the way, is the purpose of asceticism. People make a big deal out of asceticism and fasting and all this stuff. The only purpose of it, by the way, somebody said at the event, they were like, I heard you were secretly drinking on your streams. I don't drink, ever. My body doesn't handle alcohol. I actually hate alcohol now. I have not had any alcohol in 2 years. I can't stand it. I tasted like a dab of mead in Texas. I never had mead, and I was like, ugh. It made me feel weird. Just a dab, like, eh. Take your Viking mead away from me. I don't need it. This is called cold brew, brah. That is not beer. And by the way, I don't care if you drink. I'm just saying, just the drama is funny. It's like, you secretly drink. Yes, this is a giant thing of vodka. This is all PGA, straight PGA I'm drinking. I hate drinking, man. I can't stand it. And I used to drink a lot, so alcohol sucks, dude. But if you like alcohol, that's cool. It's cool for you, bro. Whatever floats your boat. So if you don't have self-control, if you don't restrain your appetites, that's the whole purpose of asceticism, you will be made a laughingstock, it says. You will be mocked by your enemies. If you have luxury, don't rejoice in great luxury. You will become needy by its expense. I remember Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson spent like $30 million on his yard and flowers. Like back in the heyday, Mike Tyson spent like $30 million on flowers and a yard. I mean, I'm sure he's doing fine now. He's got money, but I think he went broke for a while. $30 million on flowers? It's no botany. It's a botany experiment. It's a botany experiment. Do not become a beggar by feasting on borrowed money. You fronting, dog. You fronting. Dude fronting. Ain't got no money. Trying to act like he's got paid, got bank. Don't front. It's not going to work. Don't pretend to be rich when you have nothing in your purse. Verse 32. Yep. So, Jesus ben Sirach, the author of this, he was calling out people fronting back then. He's like, you fronting, dog. You fake. Dude, player hating. Back in 2nd century BC, player haters, calling out those fronting. Reckless souls, chapter 19. A working man who is a drunkard will not be rich. I remember I used to work with a dude at the paint store, and he would drink all day long working in the glass shop next door. And he had a cooler, and he would carry his cooler in, and he just drank beers all day long. And his teeth rotted out
But every day, all day long for like 40 years, he was just a drunk glass worker. I worked in the paint shop. There was a glass shop next door. And that guy always smelled like beer. And it was just like, how does he do that? Like how, I guess the boss just didn't care, because there's no way you could do that for like 40 years of doing the same job, drinking. And you notice people like that, they always drink the shittiest beer. If you're going to drink your life away, why would you not spend money on the finest beer? Why would you not drink good beer? Why would you drink every day boomer beer, like Coors shit, Milwaukee Beast? I think he was a Yankee. That's why. Dude was a Yankee factory worker, and he was addicted to Milwaukee's Beast, probably because he was from Milwaukee, and Yankees are insane. And they moved to the South, and then everybody talks about Californians moving to Texas and screwing everything up. Well, if you're from the South, you've already been bitching about this for a long time, because the Yankees they vote for all zillions of taxes, and then when they shit all over their areas, they move to the South, and then they come in everywhere, and they're fucking Yankees, and they're like, why don't you have 1 million taxes on everything? And why is everything actually functioning? It needs to be shitty. And then they vote, and they take over everywhere in the South, and they make it shitty, and then they're mad when it's shitty. And they move further south, down to Florida. So I'm like progressively moving down towards the equator, getting away from boomer Yankees that like spread like a virus. And meanwhile, on the East Coast, the West Coast, you have like the California virus that's like spreading to the middle of the country. So there's viruses. You got to get away from these viruses. Boomer Yankees. Boomer Yankees. Milwaukee's best. Milwaukee's best. Boomer beer eases the pain. Thank you. Oh, we got some nice super chats rolling in. I love y'all. Thank y'all. Appreciate that. Thank you for your patience too, since I was in Texas where they have dial-up everywhere. I had to get my little AOL online disk, and I was trying to shove it inside the zip drive, and it didn't fit. I'm trying to get online. Moms on the net. Where do we get to? Watch out for hoes. Do not get drunk with women consistently. It's going to happen in your life unless you're a total beta soy boy. At some point that'll happen. But it says, do not fall into wine and women. If you join yourself to hoes, you'll become a reckless person, and you will inherit decay and worms. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people die from hoes. I ho-deed. Don't ho-dee. That is ODing on hoes. Don't ho-dee. You see. People in the chat are like, what is a Yankee? And then if you read like 20th century World War I, World War II stuff, they call everybody Yankee. Like Chinese people, you are Yankee. Oh, welcome a Yankee. Everybody from America is Yankee. I don't even know, what does a Yankee even mean? I don't even know the origin of that word. But if you're from the South, it's just always been kind of a thing to bitch about. Yeah, we've all had friends that have ho-deed, died from hoes. So here's Jesus ben Sirach warning you. Don't ho-dee. You will inherit decay and worms. Zombies. Hoes will make you zombies. Walking Dead zombies. Gossip. Don't gossip. He who trusts quickly is unwise. Don't immediately trust people. We saw this in the earlier stream. He who sins will err against his own soul. He who rejoices in evil will be condemned. He who hates talkativeness will sin less. Right? Yap, 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 yap. If there's a lot of yapping, there's a lot of nonsense and sin. Don't do that. Never repeat a word and you will lose nothing at all, right? So don't just immediately repeat gossip. Boats and hoes, boats and hoes. Boats and hoes will inherit worms. You will inherit worms. I lost my place. Yeah, don't repeat gossip. Everybody knows this. Gossip girl. With friend or enemy, don't report gossip. And unless it relates to you, don't reveal it. Yeah, so sometimes there might be a situation where you have to reveal it. Is he talking about damnation? It could be. I mean, it just says you will inherit death. And then it says his reckless soul will be carried away. So you could read that as condemnation, yeah. But it is true that Solomon, in Orthodoxy, we do believe Solomon is a saint. Solomon has an icon, which is interesting. I actually did not know that until about a year ago. I was in the icon store and I noticed there was an icon of Solomon. I said, I did not know that. But it makes sense. I mean, there's so many prophecies from Solomon of Christ. So, have you heard some gossip? Let it die with you. Take courage. You're not going to bust. Just bust a move. But a fool will suffer birth pangs because of such a word. Like a woman in labor with a child, like an arrow sticks in the flesh of a thigh, a thunder thigh, so is a word inside of a fool. Fools just yap it all out, right? They don't hold their tongue. Question your friend, and perhaps you'll find out they did not do it. If somebody did something, perhaps they will not repeat it. Question your neighbor, and perhaps they did not say it. If they did say it, they may not say it again. Question your friends, for often it is slander. Often it's not true. Yeah, I've had to deal with this, right? Get a lot of gossipers all the time, people talking smack. And sometimes it's not true. So don't believe every word. A person slips up, and sometimes it was not their intention, right? So don't be overly, a lot of times people will jump to accusatory assumptions. You said what you said because you're trying to undermine me. I had somebody this week messaging me, flipping out. And I couldn't even reason with this person because they were convinced that everything I was doing was bad motives. I was after them. And I was like, I haven't even thought of you in 10 years. What are you talking about? Well, not 10 years, 5 years. But I couldn't reason with this person because they were convinced, right? And you see this kind of thing where people are just convinced that you had the bad motive and it doesn't matter what you say. And at that point, there's nothing you can do. Question your neighbor before you threaten them. I had to do that with this person. Question them. They weren't reasonable. Take it to the next level. Give place to the law of God. Exactly. The wise and the clever. All wisdom is the fear of the Lord, and in wisdom there is the doing of God's law. Wisdom is the knowledge of evil. Wisdom is not the knowledge of evil. Right? So knowing wisdom is not mastering everything evil, right? I'm going to master the works of Crowley so that I can... No, you don't have to waste your time, man. There's infinite works of Crowley and magicians and sorcerers and demons and you don't have to master all that, right? And if you know that stuff and you don't know this stuff, something's off. It's out of balance. So don't worry about mastering evil. It's a waste of time. It's just going to pollute your mind. Master the law of God. And don't worry about the discernment and counsel of evil sinners, right? Don't worry about if wicked people are trying to give you advice, don't listen to them. There is cleverness that is evil. There is a cleverness that is an abomination. We see this in the arts. There can be artistic works that are very clever, although very evil. So don't be obsessed with something just because it's clever or I don't know, interesting. It has the allure, but is also evil. Watch out for that. There is a fool who lacks wisdom. but better is a man who is afraid but lacks understanding. So, it's better to be ignorant of evil things and ignorant than to know a lot of evil and have a high IQ, in other words. Right? Basically, is another way we could state that. There's a man who abounds in discernment but transgresses the law. There is precise cleverness. There is a precise cleverness which is also unjust. Right? So you can be an exacting bean counter. Don't be like that. There is one who is offensive, that justice might be revealed. Sometimes offensive things can reveal the truth and be just. There is an evildoer bowed down in mourning. Notice how sort of broad-ranging and nuanced this is. Right? Sometimes an offensive thing can reveal truths. Right? So it's a very nuanced approach to God's law. It's not this overly simplified thing. There's an evildoer who bows down in mourning, but inwardly he's full of deceit. So he could be tricking you. Don't think that everything is as it appears, but don't be overly suspicious. There is a man who can cover his face and pretend to be deaf, and when no one notices, he will take advantage of you. That's funny. If he is prevented from sinning, then he lacks strength. When he later finds an opportunity, he will do evil. A man will be known by his appearance, and a man of intelligence will be known by his countenance when you meet him. The clothing of a man and the way that he laughs and walks gives an indication of who he is. The internal reflects the external. Exactly. Right. Fat acceptance, hand planets. It's just reiterating the fact that physiognomy can tell us the truth. Sometimes, not always, but many times can tell us the truths about the inner person. Absolutely. Even to the point of the clothing. Thus you see my apparel being so awesome and sexual. You can tell that I am alpha AF. Right? I'm being silly. But yes, we should take care of our appearance. We should not be slovenly. Unless we've adopted, monastic lifestyle or something like that. At that point, you're going into a life of denial and sacrifice for a higher goal. So there you're going to not so much. But even then, you're not going to be like hobo. I guess there are fools for Christ, but again, that's not for everybody. All right. When to speak, chapter 20. There is a rebuke that is not timely. We saw this before, right? Don't speak out of turn. Don't rebuke people when it's not appropriate. And there is one who is silent but has discernment. It is much better to rebuke than to seethe with anger. I've been in situations where I needed to get it out, or I was going to seethe with anger. He who confesses his fault will be kept from loss, and like the desires of a eunuch to violate a maiden. Does a eunuch desire to violate a maiden? I guess the desires are still there. But the ability to finish, I don't know. That's like the desire of a eunuch to violate a maiden, so is the man who executes justice by violence. Yeah, so don't just be violent without having self-control and reasoning through it. Bare violence is foolishness. There's a man who is silent but is found to be wise, and there's a man who is hateful because he yaps too much. There is a man who is silent because he has no answer, and there's a man who is silent because he knows when to speak. Right? This is the kind of thing that comes with age, with wisdom. Some serial rapists have been eunuchs. Interesting. I just keep thinking of Varys. Varys from Game of Thrones. A wise man will keep silent until the right time. An arrogant man will speak out of turn. Yap, 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 blah, blah, blah. The man who talks too much will be detested. Shut your mouth, bro. Shut up. The man who stands on his rights will be hated. Talking about the same guy, the guy who yaps too much. Blah, 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 blah. It's my right. My natural rights. There is prosperity in the midst of adversity, but there is also a sum that is realized by a sale for loss. There is prosperity in the midst. Okay, so sometimes even in the midst of adversity, there can be. What does this note say? I don't get this one. These verses employ contrasting terms to show that things are not always what they appear. Yeah, like when there's a gas shortage and then the gas company hikes it up, right? Gas gouging type stuff. There is a gift that will not profit you, and there is a gift where the repayment is double. There is a loss because of glory, and there is a man who raises his head from a humble state. There is a man who buys much with little, but pays for it sevenfold. Bro, I spent like $10,000 on Bitcoin, and then it went down. I lost like $9,000 on Bitcoin. Not me, but I'm saying there were some people that invested late in Bitcoin, unfortunately. You know, when it hit 20. The gift of a senseless man will not benefit you, for his eyes are many instead of one. Okay. Beware of buffoons giving you gifts if they're senseless. It's not going to benefit you. He will give you little, but he will insult you much, and he will open his mouth like a herald. Today he will lend to you, but tomorrow he will demand it back. This is a hateful man. A man without grace. A fool says, I don't have any friends. I get no thanks for my good deeds. And those who eat my bread are worthless. How many will laugh scornfully at him, and how often? So don't bitch and complain all the time. Don't be a beta bitch boy. A slip on the ground is better than a slip of the tongue. Slapstick Bible comedy. The downfall of evil will come speedily. A man without grace is like a story told at the wrong time. It will continue on the lips of the ignorant. A parable from the lips of a fool will be rejected, for he does not tell it at its proper time. Fool me once you get again. You fool me twice, you can't get fooled again. Remember the Bush clip? That's always think of that. A parable on the lips of a fool is rejected. Yes, I think Bush so fumbled that parable, proverb, cliche, that it was indecipherable. A commentary on sinners. There is one who is hindered from sinning because he's broke. His pockets is short. So when he rests, he will not be pierced with sorrow. There is one who may lose his life through shame, or lose it because of his foolish countenance. There is one who makes a promise to a friend because of shame and needlessly gains an enemy because he didn't make good on his promise. A lie is an evil disgrace in a human being, and it will continue on the lips of the ignorant. A thief is preferable to a continual liar. A thief is preferable to a continual liar. That's interesting. Both, however, will inherit destruction. So notice there are differences in sins. This is something consistent in Scripture. I mean, in one sense, yes, sin is sin, but in another sense, obviously some sins are more grievous and heinous and have more terrible effects than others. So not all sins are the same. They're also not like this Catholic system of mortal venial legalism type stuff. But obviously, you know, lying about your weight is not as bad as nuking a city, right? Obviously. The character of a liar brings dishonor, and his shame is continually with him. A wise man will advance himself with words, but a man with discernment will please great men. A man who works the earth will raise up a harvest, and he who pleases great men will atone for his wrongdoing. Presents and gifts blind the eyes of the wise, and like a muzzle on a mouth, they turn aside rebukes. So you can actually do good with gifts
even with people that don't like you. You can try to smooth things over with a gift. Sometimes that works. It's biblical. Wisdom hidden and unseen treasure. What profit is there in that? Unless you're Nicolas Cage solving the mysteries of America. At that point, it's a national treasure, and there's much profit to be had. Better is the man who hides his foolishness than a man who hides his wisdom. So, yeah, that's an interesting turn of phrase there. Chapter 21, my son, have you sinned? Don't add more sins, but pray about your former sins. Flee from sins as you would from the presence of a snake. For if you approach it, it will bite you. Its teeth are like lion's teeth. It will destroy your soul. All lawlessness is like a two-edged sword, for there is no healing from its wound. Panic and violence will lay waste to wealth. Likewise, the house of an arrogant man will be laid waste. I've seen a lot of arrogant people who lost self-control and then self-destructed. So arrogance is, as Yoda would say, the path to the dark side. Panic and violence lay waste to wealth. Likewise, the house of an arrogant man is laid waste. The prayer of a poor man goes from his mouth to God's ears. Right. So, this is an Orthodox thing too. If you give to the poor, ask the poor man to pray for you. God's judgment comes speedily for the poor man. Whoever hates rebuke walks in the steps of a sinner, but he who fears the Lord will return to him with his whole heart. A man of powerful speech is known from afar. An intelligent man knows when he slips up. He who builds his house with other people's money is like a man who gathers stones in a storm. Don't build your house with other people's money. The assembly of the lawless is like a bundle of kindling, and it's always a flame of fire. Yeah, look at groups of people who are just nasty people, sectarian groups, alternative media groups, YouTube groups. They hate each other, and it becomes a flame of fire, and it's a waste of time. The way of sinners is paved with stones, but the end of it is the pits of Hades. He who keeps God's law controls his thoughts, but the end result of the fear of the Lord is wisdom. He who is not astute cannot be taught. Anyone who's astute, therefore, can always be taught, even if you're old. Boomers. There is an astuteness that increases bitterness. The knowledge of a wise man is like a flood, and his counsel flows abundantly like a fountain of life. So Jesus says in John 4. That was last Sunday's readings, John 4, right? The woman at the well. If a man of understanding hears a wise word, he will praise it and add to it. But if a self-indulgent man hears it and displeases him, he will turn his back on it. The explanation of a fool is like a burden on a journey, but grace will be on the lips of an intelligent man. The utterance of a sensible person will be sought in the assembly, and they will ponder his words in their heart. Why are you not, yes, echoing this proverb as it's also in Proverbs, why are you not wearing out the doorstep of the wise man? Are you wearing out the buttons on the remote control so that you can watch your simulated manhood, namely sports ball? And you don't wear out the doorstep of the wise man? You're a fool. The utterance of a sensible person, okay, is sought in the assembly, yes. So you should be in a church, you should be in the company of wise men, uttering proverbs and learning the theology. That's what he's telling you to do. Like a house that has disappeared, so is the wisdom of a fool, and the knowledge of a foolish man and his words that will not stand up to examination. To a foolish man, instruction is like chains on the feet, and like handcuffs on the right hand. This is what idiots all say, right? Well, give me your law of God crap, dude. It's trying to keep me down. The fedora, the greased fedoras. They think that God's law is there to bind them. They see it as chains, when actually it's the way to be free. A fool raises his voice when he laughs. Yes, so many people with annoying laughs. And they laugh really loud. It's really annoying. And you can identify a fool by his laugh. That's an interesting insight. Identify a fool by his laugh. Or the if that dude laughs like that, he's probably a fool. Laughs are funny. Now I lost my place. Laughs. I lost my place. To a wise man, instruction is like a gold ornament and a bracelet on his arm. The foot of a fool quickly enters a house, but a man with much experience will wait respectfully. Yeah. Don't be rash. Fools are rash. A man with discernment peers in from the house of the door. And a well-educated man stands outside. He doesn't rush into things. A man shows his lack of education when he listens at the door. But a prudent man will be grieved by this disgrace. In other words, don't be trying to gossip and listen in on people's secrets. You're a fool. The words of a prudent man balance the scale from extremes. Be balanced, bro. The heart of a fool is in his mouth. He says all of his thoughts. Doesn't guard his tongue. The mouth of the wise is in their heart, not in their mouth. When an ungodly man curses Satan, he curses his own soul. Well, this is repeated in Jude. By the way, here's Satan in the Old Testament, which some idiots, for whatever reason, think that the Christianity invented the whole idea of the devil. It's not even in the Old Testament Bible. Satan is in Genesis. Satan is in most of the Old Testament in different places. He's in Zechariah. He's in the Psalms. He's in Job. He's here in wisdom. Just ignorance. And so when an ungodly man curses Satan, he curses his own soul, because as we read in Jude, you're not supposed to in an irreverent way talk nonsense about spiritual realities. And this is what a lot of new converts and charismatic retards, they do this kind of stuff. Again, read Jude, and this is the same idea is repeated in Jude. It's rebuked. The whisperer defiles his own soul and will be hated in his own neighborhood. Yeah, so if you gossip, you're ultimately just hurting yourself. And everybody will stop trusting you and learn that you're a gossiper. You're going to backstab everybody else. A lazy man, chapter 22, will be compared to a filthy stone, and everyone hisses at his dishonor. A lazy man may be compared to the filth of manure. If you're lazy, you're a shithead. That's in the Bible. Lazy people are shitty. Quote, Bible, Syriac. And by the way, if you have a problem with that, exactly on what basis is the word manure somehow okay, but the word shite is not? There's no reason for this. It's just arbitrary. There's nothing inherently sinful about the word shit, S-H-I-T, as opposed to the word manure. There's nothing inherently sinful about that. It's retarded. I remember one time I said piss one time, and they got mad, and I was like, you know that's in the King James Bible, right? And they didn't know what to do, because they were like an idiot evangelical who was being super spiritual about the word piss, and then they didn't know what to do. Grow up. Stop being childish. The disgrace of a father is begetting an undisciplined son. A foolish daughter is born to his loss, and a sensible daughter will bring an inheritance to her husband. A shameful daughter is a grief to her father. An arrogant daughter shames father and husband. A lot of hoes and thoughts out there. A lot of thoughts on Instagram. A lot of hoes and thoughts. Everywhere. Making their daddies look bad because of daddy issues. Chastening and instruction of wisdom are always timely. An ill-timed statement is like mournful music. He who teaches a fool is like one who tries to glue pottery together. Yeah, so don't waste your time trying to teach fools. Go away. Every day I get, why won't you debate so-and-so? Why won't you debate me? Why won't you debate so-and-so? Why won't you debate me? Why won't you debate so-and-so? Why won't you debate me? Why won't you? Because you're a fool. That's why. I'm not going to waste my time with you. He who teaches, okay, yeah, that's an interesting analogy, though. Trying to teach a fool is like trying to glue together a pot that fell apart. Or like trying to arouse somebody from a sound sleep. He who tells something to a fool tells it to a drowsy man. You're wasting your breath. He's not going to raise in one ear or over his head, whatever. If children live honestly and have the wherewithal, they will cover the baseness of their parents. Hopefully we can cover the baseness of our boomer parents. I'm joking. I'm not dissing my parents. It's just a joke. It's just a joke. Children being haughty through disdain and want of nurture, stain the nobility of their families and kindred. That's a good one. Yeah, if you're haughty and you weren't nurtured right, there's Freudianism way before Freud, then you stain your family name. Weep for a dead man, for he will be left behind. Weep over a fool, for he left his intelligence behind. Weep gladly for a dead man because he's at rest. But the life of a fool is worse than death. Mourning for a dead man lasts for 7 days, but the mourning for a fool lasts his whole life. By the way, obviously you can identify a fool if these texts are true, so it's not always wrong to think of somebody as a fool or to identify a fool. Do not waste your time conversing with a fool. Don't visit foolish men. Stay away from them. Avoid them. And you will not be defiled when the fool shakes himself off. Stay away from him and you will find rest and peace. Yeah, so I don't waste my time with a bunch of dum-dums on the internet. I want peace, bro. I don't want it. I want you up in my grill. Harshing my buzz. Get out of here, fool. I pity the fool. As Mr. T says, pity the fool. Mr. T wisdom here. Don't engage the fool. Pity the fool. Sand, salt, and a piece of iron are easier to bear than an idiot. Some Napoleon Dynamite biblical wisdom here. Idiot. A wooden beam bound together in a building will not be broken loose in an earthquake. So a heart strengthened by reasonable counsel will not be afraid in a crisis. So reason, logic are good things. A heart settled on intelligence and intelligent thought is like a plaster decoration on a smooth wall. As fences set on a high place will not stand firm against the wind, so a cowardly heart in the thought of a fool cannot stand firm against any kind of fear. So don't be a coward. Natural virtues are a good thing, right? Courage, honor, etc. Build good friendships. He who pokes in the eye will cause tears, but he who pierces the heart reveals its feeling. Throwing a rock at birds scares them away. But a disgraceful friend will break up a friendship. So a disgraceful friend is like throwing a rock at a bunch of birds. That bird, crazy. Remember that Tracy Morgan skit? It's like one of the best Saturday Night Live skits where he's the safari and they have the bird on. He's the safari TV show guy. That's one of the best Saturday Night Live skits. Tracy Morgan as the safari guy. Disgracing a friend will break up a friendship. If you draw a sword against your friend, do not despair, for it's possible to restore your friendship. Yes, I've had many fencing battles where I drew a sword without our fencing gear on, and I'm joking. When I drew my battle axe against my friend, we later reconciled over a pint of ale and mead. I'm kidding, of course. It would be pretty difficult to reconcile over drawing a sword over your buddy, but I guess that is possible. If you revile, reveling or arrogance and revealing secrets is a treacherous blow to your friend. If you behave like this, your friend will flee from you. Gain your friend's trust when he is poor, so that you may be fulfilled with him when he prospers. Stand by his side in the time of trouble, and he will bless you when there's plenty, right? The smoke of vapor of a furnace precedes a fire, so abuses precede bloodshed. Yeah, if you abuse people, you're asking for trouble. It's eventually going to come back around. I will not be ashamed to shelter a friend, and I will not hide from his face. If anything bad happens to me because of him, everyone who hears about it will beware of him. Who will set a guard over my mouth and a prudent seal on my lips, that I might not fall because of him, and that my tongue might not destroy me? Prayer for wisdom. O Lord, Father, Master of my life, do not lead me to the counsel of the wicked. Do not let me fall because of them. Who will set whips over my thoughts and discipline the wisdom over my heart? Where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Anybody remember what that's from? Nerd trivia. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Anybody remember where that's from? Y'all are all too young. You won't remember where that's from. Too young for that. Do not let gluttony or lust overcome me. Do not let me fall to my adversaries. Don't give me a shameless soul. Warning to children. Children, hear the teaching of my mouth, for he who keeps it will not be conquered. A sinner will be overtaken by his lips. A slanderer and an arrogant man will be made to stumble. Do not accustom your mouth to vows. Don't make a bunch of vows all the time. Do not make it a habit to continually use the name of the Holy One. Don't take God's name in vain. What did Jesus say? Let your yes be yes, your no be yo. Don't constantly be saying. A servant who is continually beaten will not lack bruises. So he who makes a vow continually from using the name of God will never be cleansed from his sin. A man who swears many oaths will be filled with lawlessness. A plague will not depart from his house. If he offends, his sin will be on him. And if he overlooks it, he has sinned doubly. If he swears in vain, he will not be declared righteous, for his house will be filled with trouble. There is a way of speaking comparable to death. May it not be found in the inheritance of Jacob. For all those things will be far from the godly, and they will not be involved in these sins. Do not accustom your mouth to lewd expressions, for this is sinful. Remember your father and your mother when you sit in council with great men, lest you forget yourself in their presence, and by habit act foolishly. Then you will wish you had never been born, and you will curse the day of your birth. A man accustomed to abusive words will never discipline himself as long as he lives. 2 kinds of men multiply their sins, and a third kind will bring down wrath. A soul heated like a burning fire will not be quenched until it is consumed, and a man whose body is given over to fornication will not cease until the fire burns out. To a man who is a fornicator, all bread is sweet. He will not grow weary until he dies. I know about this one. This one is the difficult one, right? To stop fornicating. Stop chasing them hoes. Don't chase hoes. Watch out. It leads to bad places. The man who transgresses against his marriage bed says, Who sees me? Who sees me? I'm creeping. Creeping. Who sees me? The walls hide me. Gonna find some hoes. It's not gonna end well. His fear is not in God, but in the eyes of men. But he does not know that the eyes of God are 10,000 times brighter than the sun, and God looks upon the ways of men and observes all of his secret hidden motives. Before all things were created, everything was known to God, and the end of all things was known to God. The adulterer will be punished in the city streets, and where he does not suspect that he will be seized. So, what's today's residual message? Watch out for hoes, dog. Hoes, hoes, hoes. Boats and hoes. Hoes, hoes, hoes. Don't ho-dee. Now we got to the thoughts, right? We've warned the players. Players, watch out. Hoes are a trap. Now we got to warn the thoughts. The woman who has left her husband, who has brought an heir by another man. Woo, baby mamas. Baby mamas, secret baby mamas. For she disobeyed the law of God, and then she transgressed against her husband. And third, she committed adultery and bore children by some other dude. She'll be brought before the assembly, and there will be a visitation upon her children. Don't have a bunch of bastards. Her children will not take root, and her branches will not bear fruit. Now, again, this is not saying that it's not your fault if you were born as a bastard. It's not your fault. You can still be saved. But the point is that in the lives of in this world, in worldly living in this life, you're just bringing problems upon the children. They're going to encounter problems because they're not going to have a daddy, right? A bunch of single mamas equals a bunch of beta soy boys. So hoes, stop that. Stop that, hoes. You stop that. You stop that. Stop that hoeing around, hoe. Stop it. Stop it. Stop hoeing around. Raising up a bunch of beta boys. Stop it. Stop that hoe. In praise of wisdom. Wisdom will praise herself. In the midst of the people she will boast. In the assembly of the Most High she will open her mouth and boast in the presence of his hosts. I came forth from the mouth of the Most High. I covered the earth like a mist. So here we have the imagery of the Spirit, right, likened to wisdom. Christ is also the wisdom. Remember, everything is from the Father through the Son and the Spirit. The triadic Trinitarian mode is consistent here. I pitched my tent in the high places. I put my throne on the pillar of the cloud. I alone encircled the ring of heaven. This is imagery that you see in the Apocalypse when Christ is enthroned. I walk in the midst of the depths of the abyss, in the waves of the sea. Christ walked upon the sea, remember? And amongst every people and every nation, I have gained a possession. This is a messianic prophecy. I think the text even notes this. Chapter 24 of Wisdom, messianic prediction. He talks about the people as his inheritance. The creator of all things commanded me. He who created me gave a place to live. Pinch your tent in Jacob in the inheritance of Israel. He said, wait a minute, Jesus isn't created. His divine personhood is not created, but his human nature is created. And that's what it's talking about. Pitching his tent amongst Jacob, that's Emmanuel, God with us. The tent being his human nature. In the age to come, I will not cease. So from all eternity, Christ will be, praising the Father. His inheritance is the people. I was exalted like a tree. So there's all these nature analogies to Christ resurrected, to wisdom. Then we have the references to onyx, oil, myrrh, frankincense, spices, trees. This is liturgical stuff. So the liturgical elements of Israel's worship here are being spoken of as images of Christ. I yield grace like a vine. The branches of the tree, right? Jesus says, likens himself to the vine, to the tree. Romans 11, the church is the tree. It's all the same imagery. It's the same stuff. I therefore am eternal, verse 18, and am given to all my children who are named by him. Eternal wisdom. Come to me, all that desire, take your fill of my fruits. Remembrance of me is sweeter than honey. My inheritance is sweeter than honeycomb. Those who eat me will never hunger. Remember when Jonathan eats the honey? Remember that? Christ is the true honey. He who obeys me will not be put to shame. He who will work with me will not sin. Synergy, by the way. And all of this is found in the covenant of the Most High. All of this is found in the book of the covenant of the Most High. So here we have clearly reference to Mosaic covenant, the book of the covenant. the laws that Moses commanded, the inheritance to the congregation, all of which we still adhere to in the proper way. The law fills all men with wisdom. Cleave to the Lord, and he will cleave to you. The Lord Almighty is God alone. Beside him, there is no other God. The law fills men with wisdom, like the Pishon and the Tigris rivers at the time of the first fruits. It fills them with understanding, like the Euphrates and the Jordan at the time of harvest. The law shines forth like a light, right? And we could look at this as a book that is a created thing, but it's a created thing that shines forth the uncreated light. It's a medium by which we encounter God directly. And yes, that's a paradox. It's a mystery. It's a created medium for an unmediated, uncreated reality. And that's the whole church. That's the incarnation, right? That's the mystery of the incarnation. The first man did not know wisdom perfectly, and the last man will not search out her depths perfectly. So we will always be forever learning God, you see, as St. Gregory Nyssa says. The counsel of wisdom is greater than the abyss. So there's an infinite thing. We'll always be learning God deeper and deeper and deeper. Wisdom went forth like a canal from the river and an aqueduct into a garden. Again, John 4 speaks of the Spirit this way, the exact same way. The river of life, the end of the Apocalypse 22, river of life, remember? Same stuff. Wisdom pours forth her teaching like prophecy and leaves it behind for future generations. As you can see, I have not labored for myself alone, but for all those who seek wisdom. I'm kind of tired here. Let's see. How long have we gone? Hour 17. Read a few super chats here and answer some of these since I know you guys are waiting. Franklin Chen, $5. Thank you for the stream tonight. Okay, so he said that at the end of the last stream. Thank you, Franklin. Appreciate that. Sorry your super chat didn't make it onto the last one. Ramsey Bolton, $50. Whoa, dog. I converted, but my family and friends are polytheists. Interesting. That's not one you hear a lot. Any guidance on attending religious events such as weddings or funerals or cremations? You can attend those events, but you can't participate in the prayers or the religious services. So nothing wrong with attending an event. Nothing wrong with attending any other group's events, but you just can't participate in the religious ceremony. So that's typically the way canon law has defined violation of the canons. Basically says that you can't participate in the religious services of other groups. So, if you go to a family meal and people want to pray, well, you can't pray with them to the gods, obviously, but if they say, hey, will you pray you can pray with people, that's fine, because anybody can walk into a church and pray with everybody, right? But you can't go and actively, publicly participate in pagan worship or anything like that. You can't invoke the gods or anything like that. But you can be present at those events. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. Paul touches on this, but there are lengthier writings for early Christians who had to walk this line. Yes, and so again, the later councils, the canons of the church specify that you can't participate in the religious services of pagans or sectarians or heretics. Acrobatic, that's, by the way, for everybody. That's why ecumenism, it's fine if you want to have ecumenical meetings and debate theology, try to figure out what's true. That's one thing. That's what the ecumenical councils did. But interfaith prayer services and religious services like Assisi 1 and 2, that's forbidden by the ancient canons. You can't do that. Acrobatic Jesus, $4.99. I wish I could say and listen, but I have to head to work. Thank you for your dedicated work, Jay. Thank you, Acrobatic Jesus. By the way, Ramsey Bolton, I really appreciate that. That was a fat super chat. You didn't have to do that, but I appreciate it. Tanner Nielsen, $1. Thank you, Tanner. Tanner Nielsen, $2. Thoughts on the church history written by Eusebius? I think Eusebius is not the most, he was off in his theology, but the church history by Eusebius is pretty important for its day. It's one of the earliest consistent church histories. So it's a very important book, but we wouldn't say that everything Eusebius says is necessarily correct. But definitely important for its historical attestation and testimony. Lawrence Balanag, $2. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for your support. Much appreciated. $2. Appreciate that. Aristozenos, is there an Orthodox position on the, or do you have a position on the Euthyphro dilemma? No, there's not typically going to be an Orthodox position on these things. And is this the, let me make sure I'm right. This is, before I look, is this where, do the gods make something right because it's right, or is it right because the gods make it? Is that what it is? Yes, I'm right. So we believe that ultimately the reason things are right and wrong is because they're a reflection of God's own character, sure. And so in that sense, it's a reflection of what is, but it's not that God makes it so. So, for example, Orthodoxy would not hold to what's called theological voluntarism. Theological voluntarism is the idea that the will of God is identical to the essence of God, and therefore God can arbitrarily make something good or evil, true or false, exist or not exist arbitrarily. And we don't believe God typically does this. So, for example, God's never going to decree that evil is suddenly good. And that's because, in our view, when God creates or when things have their natures, they reflect the way they really are. Right? Nature reflects the way something actually is. It's not arbitrary. And yes, God created it that way. But, for example, goodness is a reflection or an aspect of the divine being in the sense that it is a divine energy. Ultimately, goodness is the divinity. It is a divine energy. It's uncreated. And so things that are created good are modeled on that, right? Even though they're not uncreated, created being is good, and it's modeled on uncreated goodness, the uncreated energy of goodness. And so it's a reflection of that, and it's not arbitrary. So God could never make good evil. Right? So we do have a position on the Euthyphro dilemma. But in Plato, it's different because the gods aren't really personal. There's polytheism in Plato, but it's not consistent because it's never clear if, in Plato's mind, the gods are a reflection of impersonal mathematical principles that are just given hypostatic properties, or whether he really, at times, thinks that there are these gods. We don't really know what Plato thought, but yes, there is kind of we would say there's a position on that. Can we do a private chat on praxeology? I don't know. It's just, as long as you're not Robert Taylor. And even if you are Robert Taylor, Alexander, I'll do it. But if you want to sign up for tutoring, I would be glad to analyze why that school of Enlightenment philosophy doesn't work. I don't know when your economy paper is due. But I'd be glad to do some guided philosophic tutoring. But you would of course appreciate the debates that I did with Robert Taylor, because both of those debates pertain to praxeology. Alexander 199. Rabbinic Judaism is not the Old Testament. It is and it isn't. So this is oversimplified in the idiocy of online know-nothing discourse. So there is a continuity between modern Judaism and the ancient Jews. And so some of the internet people that think that there's not, they're wrong. The church has never held, the church fathers have always held, that the Jews that exist today are Jews. Paul in the New Testament says this. And even though Rabbinic Judaism obviously goes a different direction from early New Testament Christianity, that never, you can read 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 1,000-year Orthodox Christian writers, they never say, oh, Judaism doesn't exist. People are always called the Jews. And if Romans 11 describes a future conversion of the Jews, which it does, and almost all the church fathers say that it does, obviously the Jews still exist. So this argument is dumb. Anyway, that's there's nothing else to say on that. I mean, it's not that difficult of an argument. So, but the argument is confused because people think that sometime after, I don't know, the Talmud, they think that Judaism doesn't exist anymore. I don't know. I'm hearing people talking. Oh, it's people in the hallway. Let's see. Let's move on. Nikephorus Focus, $5. Thank you. Could God create a King James Bible so big a boomer couldn't pick it up? Yes, actually, most of the King James Masonic Bibles, if you've ever seen those, they're giant. And the average boomer cannot lift that giant Masonic King James Bible over to his scooter. So the answer is yes. But great question, Nikephorus, and that is my scientifically demonstrably true answer. Alexander, does Imperium follow from universalism? I'm not sure what you mean by universalism, unless you mean that is there one faith for all people? Yes, and that's why the church historically tended towards the Imperium. But if you mean universalism in the sense of like Unitarian Universalism or Origins Universalism, no. Alexander 199 again, does Orthodoxy confront the modern concept of race? Yes, we reject biological determinism, but obviously we believe that different people groups exist, and that's why you can see from the liturgies themselves, the languages, different language groups and people groups are very real. But we don't believe that it's purely biological, so you would have to reject the Darwinian conceptions. Warren, your mind. War on your mind. I'm guessing that's the play on words there. War on your mind. War in your mind. Is all meditation bad according to Christianity? Well, it depends on what you mean by these words. I mean, typically when I hear meditation, I'm thinking you're trying to like clear your mind and like have influences come into you or whatever. Yes, so that would be like a Far Eastern type of thing. But you could look into hesychasm, the prayer of the heart, silent prayer, prayer of the soul. And I would say read John Meyendorf's book, St. Gregory Palamas and Orthodox Spirituality, very short book, and that would answer that question. But it's not the same thing as yogis or Far Eastern meditation, yoga or whatever. What are your thoughts on secular music? Nothing that exists in itself is inherently evil. But how are you spending your time, right? So it would be gnostic to think that something is inherently evil, but if it's something that is an idol for you, then you need to not be attached to anything in that sense. 199, criticisms of the contemporary Orthodox Church. Yeah, but we've got a whole bunch of old videos on those, so you can find my old videos on Bartholomew or videos where we talk about ecumenism or Freemasonry or any of that stuff, or higher criticism, modernism. There's countless videos on all that. But thank you, Alexander. War in your mind again. Can one be a Christian and a Stoic? No, most of the pagan philosophies, although they may have insights, are not compatible with Christianity. Christianity is a revealed doctrine. It's not a doctrine of philosophic speculations. But that's not to say that Stoicism can't have insights or good points. Sure. Orthodox Pilgrim, $20. Thank you, Orthodox Pilgrim. Thank you keep up the great work. Thank you for helping us understand Orthodoxy and some of the deeper aspects of the Old and New Testament. Thank you. Have a peaceful weekend. Peace to you too, bro. War in your mind again. He says, do you believe in outer space and the possibility of interstellar travel? As far as I know, outer space is real. I don't think that we live in a snow globe with holes poked in the top with giant fluorescent lights peeking through. But I don't pretend to know what the correct cosmological views are. That I wouldn't say that I have any definite opinions on. I'm open to being I think there's an interesting case for geocentrism. I'm not convinced of flat Earth. I don't think flat Earth is true. But that doesn't mean that I don't have problems questioning generally accepted physics or metaphysical views or cosmologies or cosmogonies. I'm fine with that. Is interstellar travel possible? I would say it's possible. You see in the book of Acts, Like the Spirit can transport saints from one place to another, like a portal. So I guess that's possible. And when we're resurrected, there will be a new heavens and a new earth, a new cosmos. This cosmos renovated, and we will be presumably interstellarly traveling. And we'll be doing it with Matthew McConaughey. He'd be up there and he'd say, all right, I'm going to take this Lincoln into space in my new body. I got a new body that's just as good as my old body. That's my Matthew McConaughey in the resurrection. Resurrected Matthew McConaughey. J-Nick, 20 secs. What is an SEK? I don't know. Why Protestants throw away this incredible wisdom books? Because they're dumb, dude. That's why. $1.99 from Gray Face. Anonymous 99 cents. Thank you. Message retracted. Anonymous 99 cents. The Protestants thought that there were things in the deuterocanonical books that contrasted or contradicted sola scriptura. Is the simplest answer. So, and sola fide, and justification by faith alone. So, that's all it takes for their arbitrary canon. Counterpunch Fortress Maximus. Have you heard of Death Stranding, upcoming AAA cinematic game from famous Japanese developer? I did see a trailer for this. 9-minute trailer, yes. Seems full of globalist occult propaganda. Yes, that was my thought too. So exactly what I would have thought. Thank you, Counterpunch, for that. Counterpunch Fortress, again, $10. Lots of Hollywood actors are in it. Yes, probably should do a review of this. Probably should. Last cinematic game that I played was Detroit, which was total transhumanism. And if you watch the AMC series Humans, that's all Detroit is. They just totally ripped off the AMC show, which is not that good of a show. It's kind of boring, but that's the whole plot. They're the exact same. But you're saying, so this has Guillermo del Toro involved in creating Death Stranding. The plot centers around rebuilding the U.S. after it has collapsed into also another endless dystopian thing. Everything's dystopian. Counterpunch Fortress Maximus for a 10 again, $30. Thank you. Part 3. He says, men carry babies in plastic womb devices, Brave New World, in order to be able to see demonic creatures. That's weird. It also implies that men give birth. Oh, maybe I don't want to play this game. Right-wing separatist groups are huge human demon hybrids, of course. Right. Yeah. Everything's inverted. Tanner Terry, $10. Jay, I've heard you say that the faithful know the faith. How would you respond to Protestants using this criteria for determining what the scriptures are? Because they don't have the scriptures and they have the wrong faith. And they don't have the right criteria. Right. So it's not like you could just say the faithful know the faith and that's it. The faithful know the faith through the means of scripture, tradition, councils. So the Protestants leave out the means by which we know it. It's not a vacuum. The Bible doesn't drop into your hands as a Protestant and then you magically have it. You got to have the correct means by which you get that, which is the church and tradition. BD, 5 pounds. Teddy Spaghetti Vox Day thinks Judeo-Christianity is a stupid term. Is he a moron? This is a more recent term, but it depends on what we mean, because before the advent of Christianity, technically there was not Christianity. There was Judaism. There's nothing wrong with that term. The Bible uses this term in the Old and the New Testaments. It's used in the Deuterocanon. And so there was the anticipation of the coming Messiah. So technically speaking, the term isn't wrong, but it's intended to try to give the impression that there is the same thing as Judaism and Christianity in modern society, by which if you meant a common heritage of ideas about civilization and law, for example, Western society, Western civilization has utilized Moses and Mosaic law in terms of how civil order has been formed, as well as common law, as well as Roman law, Blackstone's law. All of these things go into what makes up Western civilization. So the term itself is and is not problematic depending on what one means. I mean, obviously, though, if you mean post-Talmudic rabbinical Judaism, those things don't have a lot. There's still some commonalities because it's not right to think of the Talmud as like a completely different entity, okay? Because this is confusing and complex, but look, there's already rabbinical tradition in Jesus' day, okay? So the Talmudic thing was not invented at the time of the compilation of the Talmud after the New Testament period. We don't exactly even know when these different Talmuds were gathered. They're gathering togethers of traditions. So within this body of Talmudic traditions, there's oral stuff, there's Bible texts, there's Midrash, there's Gemara, there's all these different types of things that go into making up this giant collection. It's no different than like if you take the writings of the church fathers, okay, what's in there? A lot of different stuff. There's philosophy in there. There's a bunch of Bible texts in there. There's a bunch of traditions in there. There's liturgies in there. Lives of the saints in there. So you see what I'm saying is that in the same way, the writings of the church fathers, I'm not saying they're exactly the same. I'm just saying that there's a bunch of different types of literature within this giant volume of the church fathers. Similarly, within rabbinical Judaism, there's a bunch of different writings in there, some of which are scripture texts. There's a bunch of other commentaries and so forth. So it's a mix of things. And it's a mix of traditions. And if you read Jeremiah, even in Jeremiah's day, he was bitching about the traditions. So when Jesus in Matthew 23 bitches about the traditions of men by the Pharisees, he's echoing Jeremiah. Because Jeremiah says the same thing. Therefore, we cannot make the dumb argument that there's no such thing as Judaism after the New Testament and that all of Judaism is completely different from what was Jesus and prior. That's not true. And the church never said that. This is a modern argument that people are concocting. And ironically, some of it has to do with actually trying to undermine the Bible itself. So again, we can't go to these people to try to figure out what Orthodox theology is. I'm talking about online people. I'm not dissing Vox specifically at this point. I'm just pointing out that he's wrong. I believe he's wrong about the Trinity, obviously. He's not Trinitarian, so I disagree with that. If he means, is rabbinical Judaism synonymous with Orthodox Christianity? Well, obviously not. But that it doesn't follow from that there's absolutely no continuity with Jews in Judaism and ancient Judaism. That's not true. But that doesn't mean that Judaism can be cool without the Messiah. You still have to have the Messiah, right? So, again, this is not, if we just read the church fathers, that this has already been known. I mean, this has already been dealt with and settled. And what I'm telling you is everything that the church fathers say. So, a lot of confusion on internet land, though, about that stuff. $1 from, once again, Mesh is retracted, but thank you for that $1. Okay, so we almost made it another 10 chapters. We got like one more chapter, but I'm getting really tired, so got to go eat dinner. Thank you, guys. We went for 140. That's good. So the next talk will be the next 10 chapters for subscribers today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. And then we should be able to knock these out pretty quick now that I'm back from Texas. Thank you for your patience. We had a great time there hanging out with TrueStream Media, Aaron and Melissa. 6 hours of interview. They filmed me for 6 hours. It was amazing. It's going to be an awesome documentary. They've asked me to be in their next couple documentaries, so that's going to be cool. Hopefully that'll help grow the channel and we can spread some wisdom. So look for that in the near future. I don't know when they're going to release their new stuff, but be sure and follow TrueStream on YouTube. Be sure and follow Benny Wills's new YouTube channel that we just put up. We just put up last night's Boiler Room. And again, for the subscribers at Jay's Analysis, if you want to hear the next 10 chapters for subscribers only, you can go to Jay's Analysis and find that in the subscription section, the Become a Member section. All right. God bless you guys. I don't see any more super chats. We got one more. Russell Snow, $1. Thank you, Russell Snow. Appreciate that dollar. Cha-chang. Have a good night. God bless. Talk to you soon.